you. I can't explain to you how excited I am to do this interview. I grew up a boxing fan. I grew up on HBO. So like for the longest time, you were the voice of the biggest fights because HBO was always known for having the biggest fights. So you were the voice for that. And for me to have you on the show, it's very I feel very accomplished because you're a legend in my book.
Well, pleasure to be here, and nice to make your acquaintance.
All right. So, but before I get into your career and everything, and what are you doing currently, I kind of want to get into the story of Jim Lampley. So, from what I understand, you grew up in Henderson, North Carolina, correct?
Nope,
Nope.
Hendersonville, and it's very
Hendersonville. Excuse me.
make that distinction. Henderson is a tobacco town in the northern part of North Carolina. If you've ever heard of a famous broadcaster named Charlie Rose, he grew up in Henderson. Hendersonville is a resort town in the mountains just south of Asheville, North Carolina. I grew up in Hendersonville, and I was introduced to boxing. My father died when I was 5 years old. And when I was 6, less than a year later, my mother was going to a holiday party at a friend's house near our home. And she took me to this party for adults and marched me down a hallway and sat me down on a sofa in front of a small television set that was on a TV dinner tray. And she said, sit right here. You're going to be watching Gillette Friday Night Fights. The fight is Sugar Ray Robinson versus Bobo Olson. It's their second fight. It's for the middleweight championship of the world. And the reason you're doing this is because if your father were still alive and if he were here, this is exactly what you would be doing. And so that's how my exposure to boxing began. And for the next several years, I became a very big fan of Gillette Friday Night Fights. And my mother, before she left the room that first day, talking about Sugar Ray Robinson and Bobo Olson, said, in the next hour and a half, you're going to learn everything you need to know about boxing from Don Dunphy. So decades later, when I began calling fights at ABC Sports, and I was, on an extended basis, not the immediate successor to Howard Cosell, but the next guy after 2 or 3 other people had tried that chair, and I became the next person to try that chair. And by sticking in that role and enduring it, I became Cosell's successor at ABC. And a lot of people would ask me, is he your model? Is he the voice that you hear in your head when you're calling fights? And I would always say no, Don Dunphy. And that's because I heard Dunphy call many fights before I ever heard anyone else call a fight. And I, got into television broadcasting when I was 25 years old as the result of a talent hunt for a particular role at ABC Sports. The last thing that anyone would ever have suspected at that time was that I would wind up calling boxing, because at boxing, or at ABC Sports, I should say, boxing meant Cosell. It didn't mean anybody but Cosell. And I was pretty sure that if I even uttered the word in the building, I could possibly get decapitated, because he was very jealous of his turf and aggressively negative to anybody who might interfere with his turf. I'd already had one horrible experience as his successor on the halftime highlights for Monday Night Football, and I wasn't looking for another one. But in 1987, 13 years into my career at ABC, the company had been sold. New management had come into the sports division, and the person who had been installed as the head of the sports division was infuriated by my lucrative contract and status, and he thought of me as a worthless kid and wanted to get rid of me. And he thought that the best way to get rid of me would be to assign me to boxing.
And we'll get more into that. I kind of want to go a little bit chronologically. So
piece by piece.
Yes, yes.